Hello YouTubers. So in this video we're going to put on a set of Airkewld wide 5 front disc brake kit, and couldn't bring myself to use the original spindles, so I went on to Samba and picked me up a couple of other ones that somebody had. So I'll show you those real quick. So there's the really greasy, clean those up. Here's the Airkewld kit. Here's my 64 notch. And here's the original spindles and everything. As you can see, I've already got the backing plates off. This is just a rolling chassis right now. Probably going to take the lower arms down a notch so that we can get a little rake to the front end, and possibly replace the ball joints. I've got new ones and I'll probably replace those. So we'll get those other spindles cleaned up and we'll come back. So we're back in the garage, and after a bit of elbow grease, some parts cleaner, and my friend's parts cleaning, got these all cleaned up. Got a bunch of wire brushing done to them on a little Makita, the wire brush, and the spindles are looking good. So we got the steering link arm here. We've drilled out the top two, which are these two, the ones with the different chamfered edges and the flat piece here. We've drilled those out. Not sure if I can get a close-up of that or not, but as you can see, the threads in there have been drilled out. With the 9mm cobalt drill bit. I used my friend's drill press. Turned out really nice. And we got everything cleaned up. So I'm going to do a little mock-up here of the plate going on. They give you the long bolts. They give you all of the nuts and the lock washers. I'm sorry, lock nuts and washers, and a couple of the short bolts here. See the difference between the two? And those have a Allen wrench on the end of them. Took me a while to find the right fit for this Allen wrench. Not sure what size it is, but I finally found one. And then your plate that you'll be mounting the caliper on. Nice construction, nice heavy gauge metal. And you can see that the steering link arms, there's two. One for the, let's see, what is this? This is the passenger side. And it's kind of hard to tell which one of these goes where. The biggest one is, you can see that the one has a larger, I'll get this under here the right way, the one has a larger curve to it than the other one does. So when you get it on, that piece is going to go to the rear of the car. You can see the flat ends here, one here, and one here, made up with these flat ends. And then you can see how, get this in the right spot here, you can see how that kind of lines up with where the ball joint plugs into. So you see it's kind of flat here. Or if we tried to put the other one on in the same position, you can see that there's kind of no way that that would work on the car itself. There's no way you'd be able to get this steering rod on there. So, see that fit right there. Alright, so now we'll do the quick mock-up here. So that's going to go there. Your backing plate is going to go here. got your one bolt. It goes all the way through that. You can see all the way through it. The other long one does the same. You can see how that fits through there. And you'll have one of your washers go on here. One of your washers go on this one. And then the nuts will go on that. And like it says in the directions, I guess once you get these tightened down, especially on this side, I'm assuming, they're saying that you can take that and then cut that bolt off so that it makes it look better. I'm not sure if I'll cut that off or if I'll just leave it on there. We'll see. And then your shorter ones actually screw into the threads that are actually in the steering knuckle. Now they stop at a certain point, and I'm assuming you can just keep running them through because they do come out the back end here. This other one will not, I don't think it'll go all the way through. So let's try just running this one all the way in and see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't mess up the threads on the other end. Probably be nice if you had a little electric drill with this on it to run that in there. Actually, it's working pretty well. You probably do want to use some red Loctite on this. Don't ever want those backing out. Definitely tighten this one down to the, I think it's 35 foot-pounds that they suggest. For now, let's try running this other one in and see if it actually pokes out the back end. I don't think it will, because that hole is pretty deep. It actually goes on. Run this in. I don't think I'm going to be able to get that on there. I might have to clean those threads out with a tap a little bit. Yeah, that's feeling pretty tight. I don't want to mess up any threads, so let's back it back out of there. See if it messed up any threads. Well, threads don't seem to be messed up, as you can see, but I will probably see if I have a, whatever size this is with the threads on it, see if I have a tap and maybe tap that hole out a little bit longer. Okay, so we'll tear it apart, get some rust-proof primer and paint on it. Okay, with the mock-up, I also wanted to show you how then the caliper will go on, and I'm assuming it'll go like that. You can see how those two are going to mate together, and then we got to get the bearing race on here so that we can then mount the actual disc pad. So that will go in like this, and like I said, this is the passenger side, so you can see that that'll fit there, and then there'll be the caliper over here like this. Alright, well, we finally got some good weather and got all the parts painted up. So there's my steering knuckle, nice little gloss black there, and the backing plate. Got that all nice, and I'll probably take a little X-Acto knife or something like that to kind of clean these out. So we got metal on metal when we screw the backing plate backing plate bolts in. Let's see, what else have I done? New ball joints. New ball joints here and here. Big 30mm nut. Didn't have a 30mm socket, so got the next best thing. 1 3/16 is pretty close. It catches enough on the edges to where you can at least get the 80 foot-pounds of torque on these bolts. I replaced both bump stops, as you can see here. The bottom, upper, and the lower. Got those from, where did I get those from? Probably ISP West. And I also did, I think in the first part of the video I said I was going to move the arms down a notch. Well, that's not down, because if you want your rake to be lower in the front, you need to move it up. So did a couple of postings on the Samba and went with lowering the inner, raising the lower arm up on the inner 1 notch. And I didn't take the outside arm off because I didn't have anything to pull this with. So I went with the inner. It does actually lower it more than doing the outer. But I don't know if you can see this bolt here. See if I can get a little zoom on here. So this bolt right here holds the entire torsion arm from the opposite side in the torsion tube. So you back this off a little bit, give it a little tap with the hammer, and then I backed it out the rest of the way and had my wife, using a suitable drift and a hammer, tap that out more as I was holding the other side. And then when it came out just enough, I was able to feel the teeth disengage and move the arm up. So it was really easy to do. If you want to do, there's a lot of postings on the Samba and other websites and YouTube that show you how to do that whole piece of it. So now we're going to put the spindle, steering knuckle, whatever you want to call it, back onto the the different torsion arms. So with that, oh, and I also took my trusty tapped that hole all the way through. On the early part of the video, I didn't know if it's going to go all the way through, but there was still some gunk grease left in that hole. Tapped it all the way through. That backing plate bolt now goes all the way through there. Also had to order from ISP West some more collar bolts like this that fit in to, because the ones that I had on my older ones were actually smaller than this. I'm not sure why. Took a die to this, cleaned up the threads, took a tap to these holes, and cleaned up those threads. So we'll start with the bottom. Get it in there, right? You can see that just slides right on the bottom of that knuckle there. And you can just kind of move it. And then we have the trusty jack here. Put that right underneath where the mounting bolt or mounting stud goes into the arm for the shock absorber. And we'll get that kind of lined up, and we'll see if this goes in the way everybody says it's going to. That lined up. So hold the bottom and continue moving up. Oh, bump that. Yep. Okay, so we're going to continue to jack this up. And look at that. That falling right in there. I don't know if you can see that, but this is now all the way through. That's all the way through. We'll see if we can get a collared bolt through there. Perfect. Now I can let go and that won't fall off. Grab another one. That in there. Let's see. What is that? I think that's 17. Yep, 17. Grab your trusty crescent. Crescent. Trusty ratchet. Sorry. And there we go. Okay, I'll torque those down later. And then as you can see, that will fit on there, like so. Alright. Okay, I cleaned out the inside of the where the bolts go through, so we have metal on metal. Now we'll put the backing plate and the steering arm on. So we got the 2 large bolts on top, 2 small on the bottom. There. Backing plate. One through there. One through there. Washers. Nuts. As you can see, these will go all the way down now. I cleaned out the rest of those threads with a tap. So that will look like that. Get you a picture of it there. And then this caliper. Will fit on like this. All with definitely red Loctite on all of these. And look at that. Time for the bearing races. So inner bearing, outer bearing. Get those in camera there. Hub, disc plate, whatever you want to call it. You can see it's been sitting for a while, a little dusty. That all cleaned off before we put on the caliper. Let's see. On the directions off of Airkewld's website, basically says just use a large enough socket to put these bearing races in. So outer bearing, that aside, bearing race here, very, very, very hard. So you can damage it, so definitely be careful putting these things in here. That all lined up. There is a slight offset you can feel down here as it gets past. As you get past the upper part, then it goes down into another lower part, and it gets a little tighter. I'll be using this is a impact wrench socket, deep socket, about 1 1/16, and that seems to fit down in there nicely and fit on top of the bearing race enough to where it's not going to damage the inside of it. And the trusty 3-pound enforcer. So you want to make sure that you get this started even. And then what I did is I take a little piece of brass, kind of a softer metal, and then you can use that to start this whole process, like so. You can definitely feel when you've gotten to the point where you've hit the hub itself. And this part, you just want to make sure that you line everything up as close as possible, and don't keep whacking at it. Just give it a tap, recheck your alignment, give it another tap. So here we go. So I'll just check where you align. Another tap. You got to hit it fairly hard, and I've got it on a really solid base, so it's giving a little bit. Realign, check. Getting there. Check the edge, feels good. Getting there some more. Maybe a little high on this side. Definitely feel it going down in there. Now we're really close. Line it up again. We're not hitting one edge or the other. That was it. You hear that difference? Definitely a difference in the sound when it bottoms out. And if you look, let's see if we can get this up here. You can see down in there where that race is now pretty much seated all the way down on the bottom. And no burrs or anything where the bearing's going to ride. That's all done. We'll pack this bearing. The bearing rides right in there like that. Smooth as silk. Okay, so inside. This one inside definitely has a bigger offset than the outside does. Oh, and just a little tip: before you order your kit, make sure that you make sure you measure out your spindle, because on, I guess earlier, at least on mine, Type 3s, there's 2 different sizes, and it does explain this, I think, on their website. And mine was actually shipped with the smaller ones rather than the larger ones. So make sure you mic those out, get the right size, and when you order, you won't have to go through. The guys were really nice at Airkewld, and they just I shipped the bearings that were too small back, and they sent me the larger bearings without any problem at all. Just had to wait a little longer to get the right size ones, but they were really nice about it. All right, so on this one, to start, I'm using a 36mm socket, very large socket, and then to finish it off, I'll be using an 1 7/16" socket. So this one's a little harder to start because it doesn't have a nice, it kind of rotates and rocks in there. So you just kind of gotta give it a little tap here. We're getting in there all right. Yeah, looks good. Okay, and then we're doing okay on the outside edge. And our 36mm socket, line it up. Give it a tap. See, it's going in a little crooked here. There we go. Yeah. So got it started off nicely, and we'll continue. There we go, getting in there. This one definitely has a little longer to travel than the other one, so just take your time. Check it, realign. Give it a good whack. Okay, going in, I'm getting close to the offset now. So you don't want to keep beating on it when you get to the offset, or you're just going to be working against yourself. Almost down to the offset. Okay, now we are down on the offset, so switch to the 1 7/16", which is just barely enough to get on there, but it does work. Okay, looking good. Shade Tree Mechanic tools, but that's all I got, so you use what you got. And we are really close to bottoming out. And not quite yet. A little bit more on this side. Everything looks good. Yep, there's that sound. That's a good sound. That's when you know everything is bottomed out. I'm going to try this side just a little bit more. And that looks and feels really good. One little more tap. Yep, that's it. Definitely tell difference in the sound. Alright, take a little air to that. Make sure we clean out everything on there, and that's where the inside bearing is going to ride. Once again, smooth as silk. Alright, next we'll pack the bearings and get the rear seal on there, and then the spacer goes on the actual spindle itself. Next we'll pack these bearings here, and some people like to use a good old bearing packing device where it kind of clamps down onto the bearing itself and then squirts the grease right through it. I just use the high temp stay lube disc brake bearing grease, and then just get a hunk of it out of here. This is a technique that my dad taught me years ago. I kind of like getting a little greasy. Put a glove of it there in your hand and just take that and force it up into the bearing itself. Just kind of grabbing a little bit off, a little chunk off, and forcing it up. I don't know if you can see that, but it's forcing the grease up into the bearing. Let's see, can you see, let's see, yeah, see how I'm doing this kind of backwards here, so see how it forces the grease past there up into the bearings. And I'll take the S6 grease here, put it back in the palm of my hand. Definitely a dirty job, but I like it. I think it's fun. So we'll finish this off. And you just continue to work your way around as you take little chunks and just force it up there. And then this will go right in to the race, like that. Get a little cleaned up, and then we'll put the seal in. Seal just goes right over top in that hole there. Give it a little tap, and it'll keep that bearing in there really nice. Okay, so I had a bit of an issue with the seal here. for some reason when I kept putting it in, it kept popping out. Well, the problem is that I had some grease on both the seal and the hub itself. Quick email to Airkewld. They're really great about answering their emails with questions from support. Basically just told me to clean it off with a little isopropyl alcohol, grabbed a couple Q-tips, just basically cleaned that whole area out around the sealing surface and cleaning the other surface off the seal. Press it in, give it a little hammer around the edges, and now it's been in for a good, I don't know, 3 days now. I haven't been able to get back to it until now. But as you can see, it doesn't look like it's going to come out. So next step is to get the outer bearing packed, put it on the spindle, put it up. Time for the spacer. Here's the spacer. As you can see, it's got a rounded edge, inner edge on one side, and just a basically slightly beveled edge, but flatter on the other side. So on Airkewld's Facebook page, they have a picture, and in the instructions it says one picture it goes on right and one picture it goes on wrong. Well, the picture on the website, from what I'm told after I had to go ask them again via the support email, they said it goes with this side facing out and this side facing towards the backing plate for the caliper. So I'll show you how it goes on correctly. So that is correct, and you can see that this gap is much larger than if I flip it around and put it on the other way. You can see where that gap is definitely smaller. So I was told that this is the correct way. So once you have your spacer on, take your hub, which I've now, adjust the camera here a little bit. Okay, so now you have your hub with your inside bearing packed. You want to put a little grease around that seal because it's going to ride on that spacer. So you make sure that you have grease in there. Make sure you pack grease into the hub also. So grease inside the hub. I didn't do that once many years ago and ended up on the side of the road after a bug-in in Sacramento, chiseling away a welded on axle bearing. Pack the outside bearing, and now we will put this on to the axle. Make sure we get it in the right spot there. That going on. Piece going on. And if all went well, we're going to look back here. It looks like that is riding on that spacer. So I'm hoping it is. Because that spacer then gives us enough room. Yep. When the caliper's on, it spaced out correctly. Let me get the camera here. Take this off. And I'm not sure if I'm getting this right because I really can't see what's going on. There we go. And you can see that spacer, that seal should be riding on that spacer. I'm hoping that that is the case. At least when I put it in, it made a little kind of like an airtight sound, like it fit right into the seal there. And as you can see, there's now enough room to where that hub will rotate around there on those bearings. Okay. Back on the stand. Alright, that's feeling really good. This is exciting. Okay, then your washer goes on after that. And then one of the lock nuts. Make sure we get kind of the best one sitting up against that washer. There's just a tiny bit of movement on that. Look at that. Oh, I like that. Looking good. Okay, 24mm wrench. I was always told that you want just a little bit of play there. And that may be right and that may be wrong. I'm not sure. So I'm going to tighten that up a little bit more. Feeling good, looking good. And then you have your washer, goes on there, lock washer. Probably need a pair of needle nose, bend that tab flat. So you want to take this tab, bend that tab flat. And the other nut goes on top of that. Like so. And get that on there fairly tight. Make sure you still got, rotates nicely. Not much movement. That's what you want. Check the seal. Seal looks good. Staying in there. And then I'm sure there's a torque specification on this outside. It does feel like it's, definitely have to make sure that you, after you get all this together and you run it on the street, you're going to make sure that that's not heating up overly hot. Looking really good. Okay, so I'm going to check the torque specification on this nut, and then what you'll do is you'll bend these tabs alternately on one side and then back on the other, and that way it keeps that all locked into place. Alright, after I torque this down, find out what the torque spec is. And you take your cap seal, and that goes over right there. Tap that on, and then the caliper. So we'll show the caliper adjustment if I get this all together. Torque specification is 51 foot-pounds. So trusty torque wrench, set to 51 foot-pounds. 24 millimeter socket, and a kind of a, no, not a cheap, but an inexpensive 24 millimeter wrench that you have to do a little modification on, is to get this wrench back in behind here with this bearing cup surface and down into the thing. You have to kind of do some heavy modifications to this. So what I did is I just took a regular wrench, took a nice grinder to it, and you can see how I had to take quite a bit of material off that so that this will fit down inside here. So one of those specialty wrenches so that you can hold that and then get your torque specification on it. So we're going to hold. Alright. 51 foot-pounds of torque. And so I tried to get the camera into a position where you can see how this caliper is going to work. So right here is one ear of the caliper mounting plate, and you can't see the one down at the bottom, but we can hold up the caliper itself and you can see how there's a gap right between there. So you have to get this caliper, let me see if I can get that in the picture. So I'm going by this little line right here in the caliper itself, and I'm going to try to center that right on the disc. Now, Airkewld gives you a bunch of different washers. Goes in the picture. You can see these. Let's see. There we go. It's kind of hard. Okay, there we go. A bunch of different washers, different thicknesses. That one's fairly thick washer itself. Hold it that way. There we go. And we've got smaller ones and just washers of different thickness. So I pre-fit this, and what I found, at least on my application, is that 2 of these silver washers seem to work the best. So you take your Allen bolt that fits into the top here, and then while you're holding that, fit those 2 washers in between there. Give it a couple turns to hold it on, and then the same goes with the bottom. You can kind of rotate it out of the way. Screw those in. Now I'm just doing this for test fit purposes, just to get the alignment right, because you're going to want to put some thread lock on there, and in the directions it suggests the red thread lock, which I will be using. So I get that tightened down. Let's see, you're rubbing on the tripod here, but I got that kind of tightened down. You rotate that, and no scraping. So let me see if I can get a better shot of what we've got here. So there's the caliper, and then you can see here how there is a tiny space between the caliper and the hub itself. But if you look here, you can see that that mark so you get that line lined up right dead center of the disc itself. And since this doesn't have to, the caliper doesn't have to flip away or anything like that, it uses these little clips here where you pop those, pop that back, and the pads come out right from there. So easy job to change the pads when they need to be changed. I really seriously doubt I'll be doing that a lot because not a lot of weight to this car, so it'll probably stop pretty quickly. Another shot of where that line lines up there on that disc. Alright, then it's connect I bought their stainless steel lines to go on this. Connect that back there. Bleed the brakes from the different bleed points. The two tops, one there and one there. And then rinse and repeat for the other side. So I hope this was helpful. I'm excited. There's the Wheelwood brand. There's how the old piece looks. All installed. Yeah, still got to bend the tabs and then put the bearing cup back on there, but that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Comment down below. I'll try to answer your questions as soon as I can, and subscribe if you like. Thanks.